Welcome to Startup Stories, where we go behind the scenes of some of the most interesting and innovative tech startups in the world. Each episode will bring you in-depth interviews with entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their personal stories on success, failure, and everything in between. So whether you're an entrepreneur yourself or someone that's just generally interested in the world of startups, then Startup Stories is the perfect place for you to gain insight and inspiration into some of the most exciting players in the game. So sit back, relax, and join us on a journey of startup stories. Mark, welcome to the Startup Stories podcast. How you doing?
I'm good, Jordan. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Likewise. So for those that are listening, could you give us a brief introduction into who you are and what your business Shackle does?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder of Shackle. We're a hotel app that allows guests to ultimately go through their entire hotel stay, but just using a digital platform rather than a physical way of doing it. So historically in the hotel industry, you've had to arrive at a hotel, you go to the front desk, you'll hand over your credit card, your passport, you'll sign a piece of paper, you'll get a plastic key card, you'll get into your room. If you want anything in your room, you usually pick up a phone and speak to the front desk. What we've done is we've just digitalized that entire guest journey, allowing everyone to do anything from the touch of a button on our hotel app. And that app is functional in any hotel that we work with that you stay at. So we've just digitalized the guest experience. Our bigger goals are to eventually allow guests to book the hotels they stay in, as well as explore the city that they're staying in via our activities platform. But initially, we're focused on the stay part of the hotel journey.
Amazing. And it sounds incredible to see where you've got yourself so far. Of course, in September, you got your 12 million in funding, which is incredible for Series A. But what I like to do, Mark, is to understand you from your earliest possible context. So let's run it back to your childhood. What's your earliest memory?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ireland in a farm in between two counties, Offaly and Laois, in a place called Kilcavan. And my dad is still a very active farmer. He looks after cattle at the moment, so it's mainly a beef farm that has transitioned over the years and generations. So we had tillage initially when I was growing up, which would have been crops, so your oat, wheat, barley. My granddad was a cattle trader. My other granddad owned a small shop. So the male influences in my life all had their own businesses. And as you can imagine, as the only son, if I wasn't at school or playing sports, I was out working on the farm. So the first memory is really just the countryside and working with my dad in the farm.
Huge transition from countryside life to city life, of your career path starting in London. Tell me about that transition, start back with growing up as a child, going through your school life. How would you have described yourself as a young teenager back then?
Oh God, confused, I would say. I didn't have the best school experience. Very much self-inflicted when I do a retro on it and I look at myself. It was definitely self-inflicted. I think as young males can sometimes always go through periods in life where they're like slightly confused, and I probably seeked validation a lot more when I was younger. So I ended up trying to be maybe the class clown and didn't take school seriously and answered back to teachers, and that just got me in a lot of trouble. So I had a really tough school experience. I didn't get on very well with many people, so I would say, was I bullied bracket? I was a different religion in my primary school, and people would, slag you off for that. Or as you might see, I have beautiful freckles right now, but they were a little bit more obvious when I was younger. And you'd get things like freckle face and 101 Dalmatians and cookie and all of those. Like when I look back at it now, I'm able to take it because it's what kids do. They look for small differences in people and they usually highlight that, and that becomes something that they like call you out for. And every kid goes through it. I'm not here crying over was I bullied, but I didn't feel like I ever fit in when I was younger going through school. So then as I was my later teens and probably even my early 20s, I probably seeked validation a bit too much. So I would say definitely like a troublesome experience in school. I don't know if I look back at it fondly. I wish I was just a bit more myself, which is ultimately like I am just a bit of a nerd. Like I love education, I love reading, I love educating myself on content. I super hardworking, I love business, and now I'm a lot more who I am. And I think I was probably just trying to fit in with the cool group when I was younger, ultimately doing all the things that I don't actually enjoy. But I think as a young kid, you want to be accepted, don't you, by your friends, or what you think are your friends. As you get older and a bit more mature, you realize it's actually not that important. So I definitely don't look back on it fondly. And I would say a lot of the drive initially to start the business and become successful was probably a chip on the shoulder to prove everyone wrong, prove the people I felt bullied me wrong, prove the teachers I didn't get on well with wrong. And it's definitely, having a chip on your shoulder is great. It's amazing. It gives you that drive. I don't know if it's sustainable, and if I don't know it's the right way to be motivated as you grow up and mature in your career. And, now being a CEO of, we've between 30 to 40 people, we'll probably cost 50 people by the end of the year. I've got a board of directors. Being driven and ambition to prove other people wrong is definitely not the right motivator now. But I look back on it and probably need to get over those earlier years.
Yeah, of course, it's made you who you are. Can you think of a person that's had the most positive impact on your life?
My dad. He's just like, I know you, Jordan, you're big into your fitness, you're big into your business, and I've always felt like we have our fitness plans, we have our nutrition plans, we have our business plans, but I kind of was retro, and I have a CEO coach now, and we had a bit of an offsite where they got a 360 review on my peers, so a couple of my team members, a few of my investors, and they gave feedback on, just how I could become a better CEO. I think any young CEO should definitely do it because you can always improve. I had a realization. I was like, we never have a plan for like who we want to be as a person, like how we want to approach the day. Who do we want to be? Like, if people were to describe you, how would they describe you? How do you act? What's your character like? What's your temperament like? And I look at my dad, and he's just the most self-controlled man. His emotional regulation and how he controls himself. He serves others. He's a man of his word. If you shake his hand, you can always trust him that he'll deliver. He looks after our family and his parents. That's the type of man I want to be. So I think my dad has definitely had the biggest influence on me positively, because as I've gotten older and realized I don't really want to impress other people, I just want to be my best version. I think my dad's probably the best man I've ever met. And that's not just me being biased. I hear that off all of his friends, his wider circle, everyone who knows him. He's like a man of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of self-reflection there and being true to yourself. That's obviously a huge impact, and everybody wants to, everyone looks at their dad as their first superhero, right? As they say. What do you do now? I know you talk about having this CEO coach, but what do you do now besides that to be a better version of yourself?
I think it's about being intentional. So like when we go to the gym, we have a workout program, and we might be concentrating on a certain body part, or we have a push-pull legs, and we consistently improve on it every single week and every single day, and we add weight to it so we get overload, and we break down our muscles so they grow bigger. Like, we all know what to do. Or for losing weight, we need a calorie deficit, so we eat less food than we burn, right? It's just science, and we know exactly what we need to do to get it done. But do we actively work on how we need to improve as a person? And do we remind ourselves every day? Are we building habits in order to be, a better person? And one of the things that I told the team to do at the start of the year was be more intentional about each day. So I'll give you like a small example. When I was, over the last few years, building the business, I felt everything was an existential threat. So every time something happened, I would be far too reactive to it, because I think this is the end. If this doesn't work, or if this client doesn't come on board, or if we don't fix this product problem, the business is going to end. But by definition, the business is still going, so it's not an existential crisis. It's not an existential threat. So like even last week, I have like my morning routine that I want to do, and I love reading, and sometimes I don't get to read as much. And I'd done my morning workout, I was having a coffee, I'd written some notes, and I picked up The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, which I love Stoicism. And it was about 8:30, and I was like, I better leave now, because if I don't leave now, I won't make it to the office by 9, so I'm not going to read this chapter. But I just took that extra 15 minutes just to read the chapter and just chill out. And I said, Mark, if you don't get to the office till 9:15, like, what does it matter? It's just a Tuesday in a normal week, And I think it's that type of thing where just being intentional every day. And I went back into the office, and I'm just trying to be calmer. I'm trying to be a little bit more controlled in how I lead the business, how I speak to the team. So if they give me bad news, I try and take like a step back and go, right, this isn't the end of the world. It's not the best news, but how do I receive this bad news and come back to them with something constructive that will motivate them and want them to go and solve the problem, rather than being reactive and maybe raise my voice a little bit or not be in control of my emotions. So trying to improve the who you are as a person and your character, I think, is probably the hardest thing, because there's not much of a rule book out there. Like if you want to get in shape, a million people putting out content every day of like how you get in shape, but is there people putting content on how you become a better human and build your character and have more emotional control, especially as a man, right? As a man, you can't talk about emotion, but and you're told it's macho to be aggressive and powerful. I think it's the complete opposite. I think a man with emotional control is the most alpha, who doesn't let situations make them angry, where you can just be super controlled. So I think that's the type of person I want to become. I'm definitely not there yet fully, but trying to be intentional about it every day.
Well, it's like working out for the mind. There's never an end goal, right? You're always getting better. As someone said with fitness, you should never look to achieve a goal, because then when you get there, what are you going to do then? You don't just stop. Same with the mind. You want to keep improving that. And just touching on what you were saying there, to elaborate as well, myself being a recruitment business, we focus in the AI area, in really cool startups across the whole of Europe. And in my experience with the best clients, the clients that I've found the best to work with, in terms of candidates wanting to join there and staying there for a long tenure as well, came from the CEO or the founder and the way that person was. So by you doing that, I think you're definitely on the right track to approach those things, because I've had candidates for X companies say, you know what, the company was great, but the CEO was just such an incredible person, a real joy to work with. Everybody else in the team sort of echoed what the CEO was like or did, because it all starts from the top, right? You water it down, and hopefully if you keep it all in the same way, that should run throughout the business and be the ethos for everyone.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. And you said it earlier, like your dad is your first hero, and you look up to your dad. But you have to realize that, and I didn't realize it fully, but the team do look up to you. Like the things you say matter, how you act matters, how you hold yourself matters, and you can have a real positive impact on people's lives by being just a good example. And especially as a young CEO. I'm 31 and many of the team are much older than me. They've got wives, they've got husbands, they've got kids. And I think there's a level of responsibility I hold that I have to hold myself accountable and have to lead by example. Small things that we're doing in the company already. Like I'm big into my fitness, and I've never wanted a culture of people going for beers on a Thursday evening or Friday evening. It's not something that I want to do. It's not a culture I want to have. So in Dubai now, where I am today, we do Barry's Boot Camp once a week as a team. I pay for it. I get smoothies afterwards, and that's something that I'm trying to instill as a culture, because I just think you live a better life if you're healthy. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be, a fitness model, but it's just doing a little bit of exercise every week, and it's part of the culture I want to lead. We do the same in London. So yeah, I think you have such a responsibility when you are in a position of leadership. I see the same things. I spoke to someone last night who doesn't necessarily have a large company, but he has a large following, and I was just reminding him to be intentional about what he puts online and who he brings on his podcast, because he's such an impact on so many people. And as a CEO, you've such an impact on your team. You just have to be responsible with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Mark. So slightly off the subject, but I'm very curious, why the hospitality industry?
Yeah, so when I was going to university, it was about 12, 13 years ago. If you remember back then, we were very much in the era of your CV and like how could you make your CV look good. Thankfully, we've completely removed that now. I rarely even look at the CV. It's just really about who the person is as a person and their characters that I look at. But 12, 13 years ago, it was the complete opposite. And I thought I wanted to work in Wall Street, because finance was something how the business world worked was what I was interested in. I used to read the Financial Times, but I never really understood what I was reading. But I was just fascinated by how the world works. And I felt that the epicenter of how the world works was around business and commerce and economics. So I wanted to do an economics undergrad, and I did do that. But there was a dual degree course in Ireland. So it was your Bachelor of Commerce with Economics with International Hotel Management. So I got 2 degrees out of my university stint, and I got to work abroad for a number of years in hotels. So it wasn't that I thought hotels is where I want to work in. It was that I thought it would look good on my CV when I went out to interview for roles, because I thought I could differentiate myself. I don't just have a BCom with economics. I've also worked in hotels for the last 3 years, and I have an international hotel management degree. That's where it initially came from. So I studied hotel management. I worked in 3 hotels during my university. I worked in Trump Towers in Chicago. I worked at NH Hotels in Brussels, and I worked at the Sofitel in London Heathrow, as well as a bunch of hotels in Ireland. And I've done everything. I've cleaned rooms at housekeeping for 6 months. I've just checked guests in at the front desk. I worked at the bar. I did the night shift, revenue management. So I've done pretty much most jobs you can think of in a hotel.
And let's fast forward to where you are today with Shackle, right? So obviously now you're the CEO of this business. Was entrepreneurship always within you, or is this something that sort of grew as you got older?
No, it was 100% in me. I don't know if it was a combination of not liking authority from my school days. So me working for someone never would have worked, / I absolutely love business, and I am very passionate about it. It's something that if there was no money involved, I would do this. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. I had like 4 hotel meetings today. I had a marketing meeting, I had a product meeting, I had an engineering meeting, I had 2 interviews, and like all of that for me was fun. So I don't find this work. I'm fortunate, and I think this is where people get misguided, is they see startups and founders and raising money as like the new Wall Street. So like 10 years ago, it was cool to work on Wall Street as a young professional. Now it's cool to be a tech founder. But like if this was seen as the most nerdy thing to do in the world, I would do it. So it's got nothing to do with the coolness. It's got nothing to do with the money. I'm just raw passionate about it. I couldn't think of anything else in the world I would do. And I think that's such a competitive angle for me, because if I have like 3 of my competitors in front of me, and their CEO is doing it for the money, there's no way they outwork me, because I'll do this for 30 years.
Love that. So what I like to always ask when I'm talking with guests on here is, where was you in the moment where this potential idea came about? And more importantly, why did you believe this idea could become a reality?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was a moment. At the time, I was working with a good friend of mine, and we had a partnership agency, and we'd partner brands with each other to do activations. So as an example, we partnered Mayo Clinic with the NED, which is Mayo Clinic's one of the world's leading health clinics. The NED is a members club in London. We did a partnership where they became the official health partner, and we would get commission in the middle for bringing those 2 brands together. We brought Fabergé eggs to do the 10-year anniversary with Game of Thrones. We did Bow Concept with Fulham Football Club. We did like these partnerships, and one of my very good friends, Ian, who was my business partner there, had worked at Fulham Football Club at the time as one of their partnerships executives. But what we felt within the business was we were just trading our time for money, which is like the most unscalable thing you can do. So there was only so many meetings a week me and Ian could do, and we were just bringing brands together, but there wasn't a product. There was nothing we could scale. It was just our relationships we were building with brands, and then trying to get something to work together. And I was on the under 30s committee at the time. I'm now over 30 in London at the NED. And one of my best friends now, Melissa Lester, I didn't know her at the time. She was a committee member as well. She was a venture capitalist at a fund called Dig Ventures, which a gentleman called Ross Mason, who'd sold his company to Salesforce, set up. And Melissa was like, you need to start looking at startups and tech and Silicon Valley and all these words, venture capital. I didn't know what any of that meant 4 years ago, because it's not the first thing you'd speak about on a farm in Ireland is about Silicon Valley and tech startups and so forth. So I had absolutely no clue what she was on about. But there was an incubator called the Founders of the Future Fellowship, which was set out by Brent Haberman, who started lastminute.com. And I was put forward to join that. I was like 26 at the time. And what it was for me, it was a really great form of education. And this is why I'm such a believer in equality of opportunity rather than equality of outcome. So equality of opportunity is, I think everyone should have the same level of opportunity to like education and opportunities, but then they have to put the work in, right? So you give everyone the same start line, but you do not give everyone the same finish line. Like I'm the one who then pretty much went into monk mode, and there's not a book or a podcast or a YouTube video that I have not looked at in terms of startups. Like everything. I just consumed everything you could think of on startups and investing and for like a solid year. And that's really where I think everything came together. The idea in itself, it's not rocket science, is it? Like nowadays we get everything on the touch of our phones. So if you want to order food, you go onto Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and food arrives at your house. If you want to get your dry cleaning, you go onto Laundry Heap and dry cleanings, they come pick it up and they deliver it. If you want to get a taxi, use any of the taxi apps. Everything's at the touch of a fingertips. But in our industry, where I came from, it's so archaic. It has not changed since hotels were invented however many hundreds of years ago. You still physically walk up to a desk. But the potential for that technology to digitalize a huge industry where there's hotels in every single city and town and place around the world. So it has the market size to be a tech-enabled business, because you need market size, right? You can't just start a lifestyle business and raise money from venture capitalists and build a multi-billion-dollar business. You need the size of the market to potentially be able to generate one day billions in revenue. Hotels has that market size, but it's never had the technology adopted at a guest level. So it was a bit of a no-brainer. I'd always thought about it. I thought about it maybe 5 years before I actually started it, but everything aligned in the sense that I now had the education and the platform within Founders of the Future Fellowship to start putting some pieces together. So yeah, that's the...
Yeah, interesting story. And how long have you been founded now? Is it 4 or 5 years?
We took on our first bit of money and my co-founder at the time in February 2020. So coming up to 4 years.
Right, okay. So over those 4 years, I mean, if you look at the statistics of like how successful startups are within their sort of first 5 years, it's like extremely low, right? So you've gone 4 years, which is incredible for many startups. What would you say has been the key ingredients to your success so far?
You can just never give up. And I don't want that to be too fluffy, but it really is about that. It's about like raw perseverance. We went down on like 4 occasions to like single digit thousands in the bank account, and no way we were going to make payroll within a week or two. But just if you never give up, you somehow figure it out. And it's not like very tactical, but you know, even before our A round, some investors from our previous rounds were like, okay, you should start having a plan of like how you're going to tell the team and how you're going to tell investors and how you're going to wind the business down. And I was kind of listening to them like, you know, what are you talking about? You know, until like the day there's $0 in the bank account and people start leaving the company, like I'm not stopping. And I kept going, and then we raised, you know, a $15 million Series A, which probably outside of artificial intelligence, it was probably one of the biggest Series A's in Europe last year. And that was just not giving up. So I think it's not tactical, I know that, telling someone to just not give up. But I just think if you keep going, if you wake up every morning, and that is not waking up and like watching a 30-minute YouTube video on how to be motivated. Like that 30 minutes is like send 30 cold emails, send 30 cold LinkedIn messages, ring every single one of your investors for an introduction, go to an event where you can meet people. It's not read a book and watch content and be motivated and go for a workout and eat food and write down your goals. And like, that's all some form of procrastination. That's not actually work. Yeah. Like the work is the shit stuff that people don't want to actually do. Going to the gym, working out, writing down your goals and watching a YouTube video and listening to a podcast and thinking that's a productive day is bullshit. So don't give up, do the work. Yeah.
I almost feel like you know what I was watching this morning. I was listening to a podcast, I can't remember what it's called, but it's talking about that exact thing, where people fill their day with reading this book or listening to this podcast or doing these affirmations, when really the key word here is execution. Do the work. Yeah. Sometimes it's literally just it is a case of do the actual work. And one of the things he did say that I took away, which was found really powerful, was the best people in the world, or the smart ones, you can learn books, don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for that, but these people pay money and go straight to the experts to learn straight away from the people that have done it and then apply it straight away, rather than reading books, as you say, as a form of procrastination. So I found that really fascinating. That's really interesting. So of course, those are your key ingredients. Along the way, what would you say has been the most difficult moment, and could you explain what that was?
There's been quite a few. So in February, the month we really went at it, my co-founder at the time, Jin, was our CTO. And I'm not a technical founder, so having a co-founder who's a CTO is essential. He sadly passed away the end of February that year. So yeah, that was just like, came out of nowhere, was an absolute shock. And yeah, I didn't know what to do, to be honest, because he was building out how we were going to build the product. He was my only bit of technical knowledge and person I knew, and all of a sudden he wasn't alive anymore. So that was like a tough thing to get over. 2 weeks later, COVID hit and all of the hotels around the world shut down, and everyone I was speaking to stopped replying to me. So the first month wasn't amazing. Like I said before, you go down to single digit dollars in the bank multiple times. When I made a mistake after Jin passed away, started working with an agency, and that agency wasn't able to build the app, and I stood in hotel lobbies on 3 separate occasions with big signs up saying it was launch day and the app just never worked. And then we ended up going to court with that agency. So that was the first legal battle, because the product just wasn't working and we'd wasted another year. Then I had signed up clients based on the fact that I would be able to deliver a product, and then the product was never delivered. So I had to send hampers and say, sorry, but we can't deliver the product in time for you. So we lost those hotel clients. And you know how hard it is to work to get a client and get a sale. So when you have to send a hamper to say, sorry, we can't work with you. So what I would say is that, a lot of entrepreneurship is glorified, and people see the photo with the fundraise and they see the Instagram stuff or the nice highlights on LinkedIn. But your job is to basically eat shit for a living and wake up the next day and eat more shit. And it's not even that you get good days or bad days. You get a good 10 minutes. And then you get a shit 10 minutes. And then you get an amazing half an hour. And then you get an average 5 minutes. And it's unbelievable how you can come out of one meeting high as a kite, so excited, and then bad news hits you and you're down in the dumps again. And I think that's what I meant about emotional regulation, not only in how you respond to people, but it's probably said many times, don't get too high with the high and don't get too low with the lows. But all I would say is it's not that there's one big moment of hardship that sticks out. It is basically just eating shit for a living and taking punches in the face and then just dusting yourself off and getting up. And that's what I've experienced so far. It doesn't get easier. Even when you raise the money, there's just more responsibility. There's more investors who are pinging you for updates. There's more money at risk. There's more team members. Then more team members means more HR issues, mean more people issues. More clients means more service, more travel for me. So if this is what I say, if you don't absolutely love it, you'd be absolutely bonkers in the head to think you could do this for 15 years, which is really the average amount of time it takes to turn anything into a success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I bet, besides the CTO passing, I bet you wouldn't change any of the setbacks for anything, right?
No, it's all part of it. How can you, I think it's like Everest, right? I'm sure I've not climbed it, but I'm sure people don't They don't look at Everest on, the first day. They think about climbing it and go, that's the one I'm just going to get a flight over and I'm just going to climb it. Like they build up to it, and then they get to base camp and they readjust, and like they take one step at a time, and all of a sudden you're at the top and you look back down, you're like, whoa, how did we do that? So, if I look now back 4 years when I was like ringing Melissa, and I remember at the time I had COVID, we've saved the voice note in our WhatsApp of just like me not having a clue and not knowing what I was going to do, and COVID had hit and all our hotels had shut down. And to think where you are now, where, my board consists of probably one of the biggest legends in the hotel industry. I've got the founder of Lime, I've got the founder of Checkout.com, I've got the CTO of Uber, the CTO of Pinterest, all as investors, as mentors. It's madness. The most amazing teams, super talented, hotels all around the world. Like there's no way to explain it other than like one step at a time. Wake up, do work, wake up the next day, do more work, wake up the next day, do more actual work. And all of a sudden you look back and, Einstein said it, right? Compound interest. It's like the eighth wonder of the world, or someone said it. And I think compound interest applies to building a business. Every day, do a little bit of work.
I'm really interested in, what you were talking about there with regards to you having your mentors, the people that have invested in you. With all the startups I speak to, I always find the fundraising the most fascinating, because I know, well, from speaking with these people, how hard that can be. So talk to me about that journey and that process in order to get yourself in front of the right people to the point where it eventually landed you this Series A of 12 million in funding. Talk to me about that process.
I don't think funding is that hard. Now, I never knew what kind of my superpower was, because like I was never amazing at languages. I was like okay at arithmetic, but like was never going to be a scientist. So when you're going through school and you're told that if you get top marks in XYZ, your worth must be defined by your grades, and like that's what's going to determine your success in life. But I think one of the most underrated things, and I'm not sure why it's not taught in school, is like the capability of building a relationship and sales. We were always taught sales is this bad thing, but actually every single thing you do is like some sort of a negotiation, and the ability to be able to formulate words articulately into a sentence, it just drives confidence from people. So I think like the ability to sell, the ability to build relationships are like two of the most critical parts if you want to raise capital. And I think there's then that level of authenticity, because I absolutely love this. And when I'm sitting in front of an investor, they just get energy from me because I just can't stop talking about how much I love this and what I'm going to do. And I think most investors look at a founder and what they really want to do. They want to go, can I give this person money, and do I never have to like speak to them again, and they will just turn it into gold because like they'll just work harder than anyone and I trust them and they're intelligent. They don't actually want to do the value add that they all sell on. They really just want to place this capital into your business, and they want to trust you that you have the ability to go and multiply that. But if like to be more tactical, I would say build relationships as early as you can with influential people. So forget about all of these acquaintances in your life that are basically just like your drinking buddies or like your gossip buddies or you go for dinner buddies. Like if you actually have a real level of ambition to improve your life, it's probably not the people that are around you today that are going to improve it. And I don't mean to be mean, but like most of those are acquaintances, and really they're just distractions. What you want to do is you want to get into a circle where people are usually above you. And I'll always try and do that. Even now, I'm like, right, okay, I've got to like a decent position, but it's not where I want to end up. So who am I hanging out with every week? Who's in my network? How am I like continually growing it? And I would say that starts as a founder of like just putting yourself in positions. I got somewhat fortunate, and one of the very first people that I met was the global head of recruitment for like that crazy period that Uber went through, and they were just a rocket ship. So Nick Bateau, I have to like thank him out loud because he was such a big help, because he invested as an angel, and then he just put me into that like Uber mafia and into the Lime mafia and into the Silicon Valley mafia, and I just got like introductions to loads of people. How you could do that, you'd be surprised how many people respond to a LinkedIn message. You'd be surprised how many people respond to a cold email, but you just got to do it with intent. So you can't say like, "Dear Jordan, here's my deck, you know, can we have a coffee?" Like that doesn't work. So like what I'll do is when I go onto a LinkedIn page, I'll look and like, let's take a hotelier, for example, if I'm trying to sell my product. I'll look at their LinkedIn page and I'll go, right, well, they're Irish, I'm Irish. They went to a hotel university, I went to a hotel university. They worked in this brand, I worked in this brand. They, you know, support this football team, and I found out that whatever it is, try find commonalities. And within those paragraphs of that message, I'll try and reference 3 similarities between us. Oh, I see you went to a hotel university, so did I went to this one, etc., etc. And then I'll usually tell them, it's okay not to reply to me. So I'll go, you're probably super busy and I'm really not expecting any reply. But if you've got like 15, 30 minutes, this is the type of thing I'd like to talk about. Like you frame it somehow, but you give them the option to say no. And you say, I'm not expecting a reply. So you take it away from them. You just need to be like really intentional about how you approach people. But like most of my emails that I receive, I go right click block because it's just such a clear sales email with no effort put into it. But there are a handful of emails, and I read all of my emails, that like they're so thoughtful, you just have to reply. Like you just guilted me into replying because it's such a great message. There's like, it's so authentic. Like I know you've put the work in. So when people say they can't get access to people, I think that is, that's bullshit. I was with a guy last week in London who joined like a really expensive gym, and he went working out at like 4:15, and it was the same time that like Peter Thiel was working out when he was in London. And Peter Thiel runs Founders Fund, and you're both in the gym for 45 minutes at 4:15 a.m. and there's not many other people there. Like all of a sudden you'll get talking. So you can put yourself into unique places where you think you'll meet people of influence. Maybe you extend yourself and you join a really expensive gym rather than going to the cheap one. Like maybe that's a good idea. You need to be creative, but it's actually not that hard. And then building relationships, I think like just be a bit vulnerable as well. Like I don't have life figured out. Like I'm still trying to grow. Like I make loads of mistakes. I'm not perfect every day. But I'm doing my best to improve every day. But I certainly don't have it figured out. And I think not trying to having a bit of vulnerability in conversations with investors is actually a really good idea because it builds trust. Because no one actually believes that you've got it fully figured out. No one believes that you've got usage on your product massively figured out, or you know exactly your go-to-market strategy for sales. If you're just a little bit vulnerable with them, it builds a real common connection. There's a million ways to do it, but it's not as hard as you would think. But I think you do need to get good at sales. You do need to get good at relationships. Your network is everything. And like we can go into more tactical stuff if you want, but
yeah, well, with everything you were just saying, it really reminds me of one of my favorite books of all time on how to win friends and influence people. Like you was talking about the commonalities of both being Irish, both being following the same football team, that sort of thing. I read that book about 4 years ago now, and I've applied it ever since in all of my relationships with our clients and candidates and stuff like that. And it's amazing how much people don't want to hear you talk about yourself versus when you ask questions about them, showing intent and interest in them, how much people will actually be willing to share with you.
Jordan, like as a prime example, Alex Cuppage is our board member and partner of Silverstripe, which is the fund that led our Series A. So I got introduced to him a number of years ago from a great friend, Chris Wilson, and Alex's, at the time, family office was going to acquire a big hotel chain in the UK, and I was just giving him feedback on my thoughts on it. That was it. Conversation ended. If they were going to buy it, they might look at Shackle and implement our product. Great. A few years later, I was on LinkedIn, and this is when I was taught we were going to run out of money, and I was going back to London for a business trip. Another tactical way, just I know I'm digressing, but it is a good one. When you email investors and you are emailing them in LA or San Francisco or New York, if you email them and say, hey, I'll be in town from the 25th to the 30th, I'd love to catch up and have a coffee, along with all of the other things you need to say in that, even if you know if you're not going to LA or New York that time, you can pre-fill your meetings before you book the flight. So you email
Right.
30 or 50 investors in New York, say you're going to be in town, you're putting a time limit on it so they feel like, okay, well, I can meet him because he's only here for this week, so I'll be active in replying. And by the time you get 6-7 meetings set up, then you can go and book your flight. Anyway, a tactical thing. So that's what I did. I was going back to London, but I was seeing how I could fill up my calendar before I booked the flight back. And I saw Alex on LinkedIn had moved into being a partner of a fintech fund. Now, I didn't think they'd invest in us because it was fintech focused, but the founder of checkout.com, which is one of the biggest fintechs in the world, he's the wealthiest tech founder in Europe because he owns so much of the business. His family office invested in us. And I was like, hey, Alex, been a long time since we caught up. Just to let you know, the founder of checkout.com is one of our investors. I'd love to introduce you to their family office if it would be helpful. I was actually just trying to deliver him value, right? Because that's another thing. Like if you deliver people value, and I don't do it because of this, but this is just the byproduct of it. If you deliver someone value, they actually feel obliged to do something back for you. Like if you do something nice for someone, they feel obliged to do it back for you. So I'll always try and do stuff for people first. Or if I meet like a big investor, when I leave the meeting, I do introductions for him. And he's like, whoa, how did that founder do introductions for me? Like usually it's the other way around. It completely inverses the power dynamic. But with Alex, I was just genuinely just trying to be nice, and I thought it would be helpful that the family office of Checkout could meet Alex and his fund. And then he was like, Mark, when are you back in London? I want to, like, let's meet up. And he brought me for breakfast at Annabelle's, and that was how we reconnected in late March of 2023. And yeah, September 2023, he calls me when I'm back on the farm with my dad and wants to invest $15 million into us. So, you know what I mean? You just don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, mate, incredible story. And it really actually takes me back to what you were just saying about your acquaintances versus actually people you want to surround yourself with. And I have a mentor myself, and he says, you can't just go surround yourself with those people that you want to be like or be around. You have to also bring some sort of value as well. You can't just take. You got to give as well, which is, you know, goes on with what you were just saying about giving value and leading with intent as well.
Yeah. No, listen.
That's really interesting.
I think I'm not like a big believer in karma per se, but I just think like you should give more than you take in life. You know, like for example, I travel a lot and I have a really nice apartment in Dubai. And when I don't even know him that well, but he's like, we've met up a few times. He's Rob Lipsett. He's a big fitness influencer. He's an Irish guy. He's probably the most well-known Irish fitness influencer. And I was just like, he was like, oh, I'm coming to Dubai. And I said, oh, by the way, the apartment's free. Do you want it? Like I could have gone and put that on Airbnb and made a bit of money in Dubai. It's peak season right now but I'd rather just give it to him so him and his partner can come down and stay in the apartment and they don't have to pay for an expensive hotel. Like nothing might come from that, or like something might come from that in the future. It's not why I do it. I just think be nice. Like if you can help people around you, just do it. And I just do think there's some sort of like karma effect of doing the right thing and doing nice things. I think it will come back tenfold. You just don't know. And I think I've matured into that because I probably burnt bridges when I was younger and a bit less mature. So if like I would like get into an argument, I'd never speak to that person again, or I'd want to do them wrong because I felt they did me wrong. I've completely reframed that and just realized how small the world is, and just try to do the nice, right thing as much as I can. And again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think there's a good karma effect of doing the right thing and just trying to help people.
Yeah, I think so too. Without any intention behind it as well. Like you want to do good things for people without expecting anything in return. But the ironic thing is, if you're good to them enough and they remember it, they probably will do something good in return anyway. Which is,
that's the tough thing, not having the expectation for good. Like, I think it's tough, right? Because you still want the person to be grateful. Like, you don't want to be just like doing all these nice things people take you for granted. But you definitely don't want to do it just to get something back.
Well, fascinating. Okay, so run me up to speed now. So here we are at the present day with Shackle. You know, what you've created so far is incredible, and I'm sure there's lots more to come. Talk to me about how far you want to take it with Shackle.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in like you do live once, and not to like have some quote on your wall of you only live once, but I do believe that. And I think if you were to, I actually did it last week. And I think a lot of people should do this. I wrote a letter to my younger self as if this was like my last week on the planet. And I wrote like who I would want to tell him I was, like as a person, the type of friend I was, the type of husband I was, the type of father I was, what I did in my life, and how I treated my parents, my family, my friends, people less fortunate to me. And it makes you think, because a lot of people just think life just happens and it'll always be there. And I don't think it will. I think it goes so quick. I had a very close relationship with my grandparents. And old people are very wise, like, because they've lived life. And it's like, we should speak to old people a lot more. Like younger people and like older people should be put in. And this is why I think like faith and church probably needs to get back to being a prime part of people's life, because we have very little interaction with the community anymore. We have very little interaction with older people, and they are so, so wise. So I do think you only live once, and I think it goes quicker than you think. And I think we'll have a lot more regrets than what you didn't try. So I do want to take this company public, because I think it's like the largest thing you can do with a company. I think the impact that would have with my teammates, with the fortune I'd be able to distribute to less advantaged people, to the experience I would have, to the people I would meet, to the network I would have, to ringing that bell in New York, the experience of becoming a public CEO, the responsibility that comes with that, the maturity that you get, the learning, it's never ending. Yeah, it just excites the hell out of me. I have no intention of selling it. Like the money, if someone came and offered me 200 million tomorrow, I would say no. For me, it's the experience that I'm about to go on for the next 15, 20 years and the growth that's going to come with that. And to be able to like sit down with my grandkids and tell them the story of, you know, how I started with a little idea and built it into the biggest travel company in the world, and all of the good that we did because of that. I just think that story to my grandkids would be so much more impactful to them than, yeah, I built a company for 4 years and I sold it for 200 million and I made loads of money, and, you know, what did I do after that? So for me, it's playing the long game. I'm not thinking about an exit. And ultimately, can I build an enduring company that goes public and stay as well beyond my years as the leader of it? And that's what I think about.
Incredible. And, you know, it goes back to what you were saying about the old people having the wise knowledge. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, that one thing about experience is that you can't buy it. And by you saying you're going to be on this journey for the next 10, 15, 20 years, for the amount of experience you're going to gain, then you're going to be that old man to your grandchildren with the wise experience, which is pretty cool to think about. Yeah,
I think the younger generation, and even our generation, because we're of it, we really put like money and material objects at way too high a value. And I'm so fortunate that I grew up on a farm, and my mum and dad would never let me get ahead of myself. And like my dad would clip me around the head if I ever like turned up in the farm with a Lamborghini or something, or started posting ridiculous photos. And even like so many young CEOs right now, you can see them, like they put up the photos of the nice cars or their nice watches, or they're at tables, and the influence they're having on younger boys to go and just make money. Like it's not about money. I know that's so odd to say when you're building a business, to make money. But it's actually about the journey. It's about the experience. It's about learning how to communicate. It's about learning how to be empathetic with your team. It's learning how to lead. It's learning how to take responsibility, to just be a better person. And then the impact that I look at, that I have, like I'll take Matt, our VP of marketing, you know, started designing stuff for me at the start. He was working for a guy who didn't treat him well and didn't breed confidence into him, and like always put him down. He joined us full time. You could see his confidence grow. He grew through the business ranks. He's now moved his life to Dubai. He's just experienced a new city. He came from London. He's earning a very good salary. He's just gone through a life experience. Like that's amazing. That's like actually the benefit of building a business, not the amount of money that you make personally at the end of it. Because I'm in a fortunate position now where I do have lots of friends and lots of investors that have access to lots of amazing things. And don't get me wrong, like this is going to sound so bad, and I never thought I'd ever say this, but like I've been with a friend's boat on the Monaco Grand Prix for the last 3 years. And this year I was like, oh, this was actually really boring, and like I don't think I would go next year. It's not something that I want to put myself in. It just wasn't, I didn't enjoy the few days. If you had told like 18-year-old Mark that you'd be turning down a super yacht at the Monaco Grand Prix, like there'd be no words. I wouldn't be able to say to you. So like the lesson is that all of that stuff really doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't. It's just the experience of life that matters and the journey you're going on. And yeah, I just think so many people are doing it for the wrong reasons. I'd love to be able to change it, but unfortunately people are just influenced so much by what they see online nowadays. And I'm going back to speak to my secondary school in a few weeks and to speak to the students there. And I just really want to get it right, you know, and I get like the theme and the topics and get it right. It's hard to do it right because you can have such a positive influence on people. And I think our role models nowadays, it's like reality TV stars and Z-list celebrities and, you know, influencers who are selling Forex trading signals online. It's just all so bad. Like, where did the days go where we'd look up to people like Chuck Feeney and Carl Icahn and Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, like real men, you know, who like have marriages and they're married with kids and they're loyal to their wife and, you know, they're a great dad and they're good in their community, and that they're like the models we need again. It's so bad right now. So yeah, it's a weird world we live in.
Well, I think with everything you just said there, it really reminds me of what's wrong with the modern world right now with regards to, I think many people mistake short-term pleasures for happiness, which goes back to what you were saying about like the super yacht and the nice cars and all that sort of stuff. And it really means nothing. And really, like what we talked about off camera before, that everybody needs a purpose, man or woman. And without purpose, I think you quit very quickly. It depends on each person how long it takes them to realize, but you realize I'm not actually that happy. And happiness, I guess, is a state of mind. It's only temporary, right? But if you're constantly fulfilled and purpose, I think that's actually bigger than happiness, because you could be happy one day and sad the next. But if you're still on your journey of fulfillment, like with what you're doing, it's just a roller coaster, right? You're still on the track.
Yeah, but happiness is just an emotion. It comes and goes. But sadness is just an emotion. It comes and goes. You can't chase happiness just as much as you can chase sadness, because it's you can't bottle it. It is an emotion. It comes and it goes. Like your business could be killing it, and your mum rings you to say like she's ill. Your world would crash in front of you. So it's not about chasing happiness. You nailed it. It's about changing fulfillment and purpose. And why I say all that is that I genuinely think startups have become too much about money and raising money and, you know, getting the TechCrunch article to say you're Forbes 30 under 30 and you've raised money. Like, we're no better than the bloody influencers online putting up their Lamborghinis and Rolexes that they've probably rented just to impress people. Like, startup world is turning into a bit of a look at me, I'm so cool, I'm my Forbes 30 under 30 with my raised money. And a lot of people starting out are probably going into startups now just to do that. And I think it's the wrong thing, because I hear people talking about burnout a lot now, and I think it's the biggest load of bullshit ever, for a number of reasons. One, burnout is most likely because you're doing a lot of stuff that you don't really love doing, and you've gone into it for the wrong reasons. So like all of the stuff that I did today, which was a really long day, it's like, I don't know what time it is now. It's probably about 7:30, and I've got a couple of calls this evening. I'll finish at 11 p.m. I started this morning at 5:30 a.m. and I'll do that most days. But like, I've got energy. Like, I've so much energy because I love it. Like, even the shit stuff and the problems, I actually get a kick out of fixing it. Like, I absolutely adore it. So if you're going into something that you're doing it for the wrong reasons, trust me, very quickly the money won't be worth it, especially because most of these companies take 10 to 15 years to actually liquidate any cash. So you're not getting money for like a very long time, and you got to love the process of doing it. So like, that's one of the main things. And I really think startups is, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going down the wrong path. And I want to be always very honest with people when they say to me like, should I start a company and I want to raise money? And they actually talk to me more about the raising money and the investors part than they do about their product and the reason why they want to build it and why they want to build a team and why they want to spend the next 15 years building this business. They never talk to me about that. They always talk to me, how'd you raise money? How did you meet investors? So I think we need to reframe a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. So you've come all this way and you've talked about how far you want to take Shackle, which is incredible. But for Mark, yourself, what are your personal motivators? Why do you, I mean, you've achieved so much already at such a young age. You've got this business, you've got this funding, as they would say. Why do you still get out of bed every morning and think, you know, I want to keep going. I want to take it to the next level every single day?
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm that's like, it depends how you define success, I suppose. I wouldn't necessarily call myself successful yet. I'm definitely on the right. So I think like trajectory over your current position is far more important. So like, what are you on a positive trajectory? I think that's what everyone should aim for. So never look at someone else and say, oh, they're so much further ahead of me. Like, do not get into that comparison game, because it can be like such a thief of your joy on each day, because you could actually be making such micro moments of progress. You should just look at yourself. So for me, it's whatever way I'm wired, I genuinely just want to improve every single day. And like, I know I'm just I am so flawed. I've done some terrible stuff in my life. Like, I've made all of the mistakes you can possibly make. I'm just figuring it out like every other person on the planet. But I think what I'm pretty good at is I'm pretty good at not kicking myself when I'm down, saying, you know what, you messed up, you made a mistake, you're human, right? How do you like fix from that? And I usually learn pretty quickly. So like, I'll make the mistake, I'll get punched in the face, I'll do the stupid thing, and I'll learn. And I'll go, I shouldn't have done that. How can I be better the next time? And I'm just constantly making improvements. I'm far more mature than I was a few years ago. I think, you know, if someone was to like look at this podcast and go, God, Mark was never like that a few years ago, I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I'm not going to be hard on myself. No. Like, I was where I was then, and I am where I am now. And the only thing I can say to, you know, anyone who comes into my life, I'm always trying to get better. So that's just in me. I'm constantly trying to improve. I have a big weight on my shoulders, and this was never put on by my mum and dad, but I'm the first son not to take over the farm. And I look at my dad, who's early 60s now, and he's doing a lot of like labor intensive jobs still on the farm. And like, he sacrificed so much for me and my sisters to get a private education and go to boarding school and have all the opportunities to be on the sports teams. And I really feel I owe it to my mum and dad that like, I get the best out of my life and that they look at me, and not necessarily about money. Like, don't get me wrong, it is amazing to be able to help mum and dad, and you know, I hope in the future I can do a lot more for them and help them retire and have an amazing retirement. But it's not necessarily about that for them either. It's like, I hope they look at me and they go, I'm so proud of my son. And I hope my dad goes, that sacrifice to like not drive a fancy car and not go on fancy holidays so I could give my son a good education. And I really feel I brought my son up to be a great man, and he made the most out of life. And if I can like look at my dad on his final days and he can go, I'm so proud of you, son. Like, you are exactly, you know, who I wanted you to be. You've done everything. Like, to me, that's just like, it would be an amazing conversation. I never would want to look at my dad at the sacrifices he made and he goes, you let me down. Like, that would crush me. So I think about my mum and dad a lot, and just like being of service to them and making them proud is probably a big motivator. It used to be about like getting money so I could look after them. And then I realized I don't think as a parent you look at your kids and go, you know, I want them to give me money. Like, that's not what your parents want, even though you think you have to give back, and the only way you can give back is by financial things. But I actually think the man you become, or the woman you become, the person you become, your parents look at that and go, I'm so proud of you. And we only usually get that context or perspective when we have kids ourselves, and we realize, wow, our parents really love us, because I love this baby so much. Like, I would die for it. I would protect it no matter what. And then you go, wow, my mum and dad, they really they just adore us. They would do anything for us. So I try to have that perspective now. And I just want to make mum and dad proud as well. So that's a big thing. And yeah, I suppose there are a few things that I think about every day.
It really reminds me of something I've studied in the past, looked a lot into, you know, the inner child sort of thing. And they often say a lot of entrepreneurs or people that, you know, are very ambitious, they're often driven by their insecurities or their inner child, which is often to impress their father. So that's clearly something that's massive for you. I mean, not saying it's an insecurity, but just that never-ending wanting to impress your dad and just live by a good example to him. So as you say, he can say, Mark, I'm so proud of you, son. Just those words, I guess, can be so powerful and resonate with you so well.
Yeah, I think there's probably two things within that. You'd probably want to separate it. I do think the insecurity part is 100% correct. I don't think that's necessarily like always parents driven. I think that's like your environment of when you go to school and how you interact with friends. And like, let's be honest, everyone's a little bit insecure. If someone was to sit in front of you and say they don't have insecurities, like they're just full of shit. Like we're all massively insecure. I'm not afraid to say that. You know, I just think you need to be careful about like, you know, why you do things. And I've matured to a point where I probably was motivated by the chip on my shoulder to go, you know, F you, look at me now. And I do think that's a negative fuel. It's still fuel and it can definitely work, but it is negative fuel. I look now and I'm like, what like impact can I positively have on the world around me by doing this? And like now that kind of motivates me a lot better. Like the why is more purpose driven for like having good intent and, you know, just being a good human being rather than I want to meet the bully, you know, in our 20-year anniversary and say, look at me now, or meet the teacher. So I'm glad it's come to me and I've matured now, because I think if the secondary school had asked me to come back and speak to the kids, it would be a lot more like, F you teachers, look at me now, and kids don't listen to them. I don't know if I would have been a little bit spiteful, but now I think you know, the teachers were right. I was in the wrong. I was a little shit. And I'm just trying to mature. But yeah, mum and dad, it's definitely to make them proud. I think the insecurity part is just, you know, being a child and taking the shit that you take and you're not accepted. And then you feel like you're living your whole life trying to prove those people that you are good enough. And I think you need to let go of that inner child as quick as you can. Like, you're not the child anymore. Stop acting like one. So if you're driven by that insecurity, like you're not that little child that you got picked on. Like you're now a handsome, active, fit, successful business guy, or whatever way you want to describe yourself, but like start talking positively to yourself. So yeah, reframe your mind as quick as you can from that insecure child. It's not positive.
Okay, so last question, Mark. So I have a lot of people listening that sometimes are in full-time employment, for example. They're perhaps really good at what they do, but like you know, they want to perhaps start their own business or have a great idea. But like many people, as you know, as they say, a lot of people take their ideas to the grave. So a lot of people are too scared to make that jump. What's one bit of advice that you would give to someone that is really sitting on the fence on whether to make that jump into starting a business and building an idea?
I would layer it first. So I think there's different types of businesses. I do think a tech startup is the Olympics of business. I think it's the highest form of building a business, because you're building for true global scale. You're taking other people's money. You have a board of directors. You've got international operations. You've got a massive team. It is the Olympics of business. And you have, like, if you need advice to do that, you're not cut out to do it. You just have to, you have to want to do it. Like, you just do it. Nothing will stop you doing it. So I think, like, if you need me to sit here and motivate you to start a tech business and take other people's money and build a global business, like, you're not cut out for it. So I think that's that. Like, you shouldn't need to be motivated by a person online to start that type of a business. I think there should be more admiration for people who build lifestyle businesses. Like, I don't think you need to do a global technology business or a global anything business or make tens of millions or hundreds of millions in revenue. There's a huge admiration for just starting a lifestyle business or getting out of the workplace where you were working for a boss you didn't really like, in an environment you didn't really like, and you could actually, you know, go and start your own business where it's just you, and you become an independent contractor, or you have 2 or 3 people with your friends and you start it. Like, there needs to be more admiration for those type of businesses. And I think there, yeah, you probably need a little bit of guidance and a little bit of, it's okay, it's not as as risky as you think. And it's just a fear of failure, right? So you need to get out of that, what other people will think of you if it fails. So I've obviously put myself out there now. We've raised a lot of money, but the likelihood is that it still fails. And I'll come back on this podcast and talk to you about why it failed. I don't care. Like, people who will judge me are just the people who couldn't get up off their fat ass to do anything in the first place anyway. So now they're just happy that I failed because I'm back down to what they feel is their level. People who are in business will respect the effort and go again, and you'll be back up and running in no time. So I'm not afraid of failure. I think people who are afraid to make the move from full-time employment, again, if you wanted to build a global business, you shouldn't need the motivation. But if you want to build a lifestyle business, I think the earlier you start, the better, because you do have less risk. Like if you have a wife or a husband, or you have a mortgage, or you have kids, all of a sudden they're layered up, and they are more reasons why you might not be able to do it financially, because that's how the world works. You need to pay for your mortgage, you pay for your kids. So I think the earlier you can start, the better. But my mum said, I think to me in like the first or second year of the business, she kept going to me, are you going to go back and do your MBA? Because she was all about education. She came from that era of parenting, and love her to bits. But that is that era of parenting. But starting a business, even if it's a lifestyle business, you will learn more starting a business than you would going to do an MBA. So let's say you were I think I need to leave full-time employment and I'm going to go back to do an MBA before I start the business. Let's say the average MBA costs, 25 grand a year for 2 years. It's 50 grand. You're better off paying yourself a salary of 25 grand for those 2 years and starting a business, because you'll learn way more doing that. But it's just fear of failure, Jordan. So, I'm not a psychologist, but I think you need to write down all of the reasons why you think someone would judge you, and why you're putting your control into the power of other people's hands. That's all you're doing. You're letting other people dictate what you do in life because you're worried what they will think of you when you will go and start your own business, or one day it fails. So that's your own complex to get over. I can't help you with that. So yeah, I just don't think most entrepreneurs need the motivation to start it. I think we're glorifying it as a career opportunity. I actually think you're better off probably finding a really great company that has a really great culture and just working for that company. I don't actually think entrepreneurship is something everyone should do at all. I think we should discount it more so than promote people to do it, because it's fucking tough. You know it yourself, Jordan. It's not the easiest life.
No, I could not agree more. And it made me really think when you said about, you've got to either want it or not want it, rather than just be motivated by someone you're listening to and whatnot. And I think I had that in me as well. And going back to what you were saying, education versus just starting a business, I've always said, I started my first business at 23, so 7 years. I've learned more in those last 7 years than the previous 23 years before. I swear to God. And it's incredible. And we've had with our business so many setbacks. Like everybody, we experience COVID, and what happens when startups don't get funding. If they don't get funding, they're not hiring. So who gets affected? We do. So COVID was horrendous time. No matter who we spoke to, even existing clients, sorry, Jordan, we're pausing hiring for the next year. So, where it's like trying to get sales, cold calling, whatever it means, no interest. So we had to ride that. And people, as you say, they see the highlight reel of the nice car or the funding or the fact that you've reached a certain head count. But what they don't see is those times when the market, the uncontrollables happen, and there's almost not much you can do about it apart from stay headstrong with the right mindset.
100%, but you're a confident guy as well, right? From when I knew you were always confident. So I do think fear of failure is like a bigger thing than people let on. And you and your brother, you always had that kind of go-getter mentality. And I think whether it was confidence from the gym or your appearance or who you surrounded yourself with, but you always had that confidence and not really caring what other people think. And I think it's a bigger superpower than people probably give it credence, because not caring what other people think of you is massively beneficial. And if I was to go back now as younger self, I would just try a million things. I think the more you can try, the more you can learn what you do like and what you don't like. And the quicker you can get to that path. So like I was 27 when I first started it, but I wish I actually went out of uni and started it straight away. I'd have 5-6 years more, because I was probably doing the employment stuff because I felt that's what I had to do, because that's what the normal thing to do was. And I probably wanted to impress people to say I worked in the city of London and I read the City AM on the way in, and I got the tube and I had my suit and tie on, and look at me, like I'm a city boy and I work in finance. That's 100%. That's what it was. And I hated it, right? But that was not me, but I was doing it because I thought it would impress other people, and I was trying to live my life based on what other people thought of me. And the second I gave up caring with that and it just was authentically me, I found what my love was. So I would say first thing you should do is not say I want to start a business. Just ask yourself, are you doing things every day because you're worried what other people think of you? And if you can get rid of that, I think it's the most important thing you can do in your life.
Absolutely. I think the key to this podcast has been authenticity. Mark, thank you so much for joining me on the Startup Story podcast. I look forward to following you and Shackle from afar. So yeah, really appreciate your time, Mark.
Yeah, cheers, Jordan. We'll catch up in London soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Startup Stories. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests and learning more about their journey in the startup world. Of course, we'll be back soon with another exciting episode featuring a new guest. So make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and additional content. And lastly, if you have any suggestions for guests or topics you'd like to hear about, then let me know. All feedback is appreciated. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.